All right, today we're diving into one of the most famous and maybe one of the most misunderstood quotes in the history of philosophy. You've definitely heard it before, but what it actually means, well, that's way more interesting than you might think. And there it is. Religion is the opium of the people. For more than a century, this line has been thrown around as a simple, hostile jab at faith. It sounds like Marx is just writing religion off, as a dumb drug for the masses. But that's really not the whole picture. Because when you look at the full quote, in its full context, you find a critique that's actually surprisingly empathetic. It's sociological, and it's aiming at a much, much bigger target than just religion itself. So what was Marx really getting at? Let's unpack it. Okay, so to really understand the quote, you have to start where Marx started, with the physical, material world that he was living in and observing. His whole argument is built on a very specific philosophical foundation. That foundation is something called historical materialism. The core idea is that the way a society produces stuff, its economy, its factories, its labor, what he calls the base, is what shapes everything else. Your government, your culture, your family life, and yep, your religion, all of that is part of the superstructure. Just think of it like a building. The economic base is the foundation. The superstructure is the house you build on top of it. From Marx, you just can't understand the ideas floating around in the house, like religion, unless you first dig down and analyze the economic foundation it's all resting on. So what did that foundation look like for the average person in the 19th century? Well, in Marx's view, it was a brutal, heartless world. The working class was caught in a miserable cycle of exploitation and alienation. And all that suffering, it creates a deep, desperate human need for some kind of comfort, for meaning, for solace. And that is exactly where religion enters the picture. It's the answer to that need for solace. And it's where we find the true, two-sided meaning of his famous quote. So let's look at the full thing. See? This is the part everybody forgets. Before he calls it opium, Marx calls religion the sigh of the oppressed creature and the heart of a heartless world. I mean, that's not dismissive at all. It's actually deeply empathetic language. So his critique really has two parts. On the one hand, religion is a symptom. It's a genuine expression of real pain, a totally human response to a terrible situation. But on the other hand, it acts as a painkiller. And like opium, it offers powerful relief, sure, but it's an illusion. It just dulls the pain without ever curing the sickness that's causing it. And that's really the crucial takeaway here. Marx isn't primarily attacking the people who turn to religion. He sees their faith as a completely natural, almost unavoidable result of their suffering. The sigh is real because the oppression is real. And it's worth pointing out this wasn't some idea he came up with late in his career. He was working through these really complex, empathetic ideas about society pretty early on. He published this specific work all the way back in 1843. Now, here's the next step in his argument. If religion is a painkiller, he says it can also become a really powerful tool for social control, one that the ruling class can use to keep things just the way they are. He points to three main ways this opium works to protect the status quo. It makes inequality seem legitimate, it discourages people from taking action here in the real world, and it creates what he famously called false consciousness. So first, it can make the way society is structured seem natural, even divinely ordained, right? If the rich are rich and the poor are poor because it's all part of God's plan, then it's not a man-made system of exploitation that you could or should try to change. And second, by promising a huge reward in the afterlife, it makes the injustices of this life feel less important, more temporary. Why would you risk everything to fight for a better life on Earth when you're promised an eternity in paradise if you just wait patiently? And all of this is building toward his final point. Because once you understand how he thinks the opium works, you can finally see what his real target was all along. Now, you might think his solution would be simple. Just get rid of religion. Tear it all down. But for Marx, that would be like trying to cure a disease by just yanking away the patient's painkillers. It misses the point completely. His actual goal was way more radical. He wanted to get rid of the miserable, oppressive conditions that made people need a spiritual painkiller to begin with. He wasn't targeting the symptom, he was targeting the disease. The logic for him was pretty clear. First, you have to fix the material world. You have to end the exploitation that creates all the suffering.
Second, you build a truly just and humane society. And only then, he argued, would the need for the opium, the need for that sigh of the oppressed, just fade away on its own.
And so, that's the question he really leaves us with. If religion is a response to suffering here on Earth, what happens to it in a world where that suffering has been cured? It's a powerful thought that completely reframes the entire debate.